Okay, so we are here, and auspicious day. We get to do 10 Commandments, which is very nice, amongst other things. Because we left off last time, and they were preparing. They were at the mountain. They were, this far and no further. With the building the boundaries. Very common, in religious tradition that you have some space that is more sacred than other space, and there are different rules that apply to it. Terra Sancta, there's always holy ground, and then holy ground is a different experience than in not holy ground. It can be a land, like, Israel obviously is holy land, so to speak, but like the way we are in the sanctuary, it's different than where we are in the supermarket or where we are in the ball game. That there's holy ground as an idea of its importance, impact, influence. And so much the same way, of course, Mount Sinai, you can only get so close to it because it is a holy place. And if you do the wrong thing, you get zapped because there is danger with holiness as well. So I have to handle holiness very carefully. Again, if you do the wrong thing, you get the divine zets, and that's it. So that's sort of where we are. They're all gathered on the mountain. There's thunder and lightning and smoke and fire. As I said, God puts on a good show usually. And so there's a lot of just things going on. And now we're going to hear the 10 Commandments. We're going to get on going. Let's do our blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Excellent. Okay.
And I could probably still, if I could remember it, this was the part I read last year.
Yes, for your adult bat
mitzvah
mitzvah experience. How do you give us some of the English then in honor of it? God spoke these words.
Yeah. Anoki Adonai Elohecha. See, yeah, okay. God spoke all these words saying, I, Adonai, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods besides me. You shall not make for yourself a sculptured image or any likeness of what is in the heavens above or in the earth below or in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, your God, Adonai, am an impassioned God, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and upon the fourth generation of those who reject me, but showing kindness to the 1,000th generation to those who love me and keep my commandments.
Okay, I'll pause right there. I switch hands. You don't see my thumb in the middle of the screen. So we have the commandments. We are beginning commandment number 1. I am the Lord your God. I'm not your God who led you out of Egypt, etc., etc. Now we get our next one, no other gods besides me. Again, difference between monotheism and monolatrism can be seen here in the 10 Commandments, that by the nature of that line, it is an admission that there might be other gods, because if there were no other gods, we wouldn't have to mention it, but the idea is that there are other deities that are perhaps around. There is, of course, a debate, of whether or not they believe that other gods still existed, though, again, with the understanding of the ancient Near East, there is an understanding that there would have been a communal belief in other spirits, deities, gods, beings. But again, the God that you believe in is the best God. Just like today, the God you believe in is the best God. And so go team Israelite. And so back then, that's what we had here. If we remember Ein Keloheinu, right? And so that's the whole, song, right? Is that there's no one like our God, right? I would like to mention that they changed the order of the verses, in Ein Keloheinu. In Ein Keloheinu, they changed the order. That it starts Ein Keloheinu, right? And then what's next after Ein Keloheinu, if we remember? Oh, sorry. So it's Ein, right? And then what's after Ein? I'm just singing in there.
I can't even remember what the next verse is.
yeah, me. Yeah. And so me is who, right? So Ein Keloheinu, there's no one like our God. Me Keloheinu, who is like, our God. The first version of it was me was first. Who is like our God? Ein Keloheinu, no one's like our God. But they switched it, that way they could have the acrostic, the Amen. Ein Keloheinu, me Keloheinu, Nodel Eloheinu. So you get the Amen, Amen going down, which is nice too. So, a little random biblical and liturgical history for you. It was also a German drinking song, as we remember. So that's how they got the melody. Yeah. Picture the beer steins. Yeah, it was a German drinking song. And so they just changed the lyrics, which is, again, how you get good music. Good liturgical music, to steal some other person's stuff and make your own words. Okay, so.
But this always strikes me as God has a really strong guilt trip he lays on the Israelites every time.
Well, God does the stuff for you. God led you out of Egypt. Not gonna go worship Baal. What an ingrate. God has to let you know what's going on. Now, over here, of course, we have theological fun towards the end of this commandment, right? The idea of I'm an impassioned God, a zealous God, a jealous God, whatever, El Kana is the Hebrew. And then we get this lovely piece of theology here, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, this is rotten theology. No one liked this, including the prophets. They changed it in the books of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. They completely got rid of this idea because they hated it too. The idea that if I act the fool, that my kids can be punished for my actions, or my grandkids who are yet to be born can be punished for my actions, and even my great grandchildren, the fourth generation. If I decide to eat a shrimp or something tomorrow, that my great grandchild might get hit by lightning or something. And so the prophets wisely did not like this idea and said, everyone is accountable for their own sins. Everyone's accountable for their own transgressions, but the children do not get punished for the sins of the father, or the mother, however we're going to look at it, right? And so this is in the Ten Commandments, but this becomes changed later because the prophets, the rabbis went bleh, because they didn't like that at all. That was a technical way of they looked at it. They did not care for this idea. Okay, the showing kindness we like, that we can keep, because kindness is always better. We can have kindness whenever we want. To the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. We'll take the good one.
God just made a mistake when he said that.
It's all how you hear it.
No.
How you hear it, right? Maybe they needed to hear a little bit of what God was saying. Okay. And even God can evolve, maybe. Or maybe not. Okay. That was good. Sharon, you're going to pick up, you shall not swear falsely.
You shall not swear falsely by the name of your God, Adonai, for Adonai will not clear one who swears falsely by God's name.
Yeah, watch that blasphemy. Go ahead.
Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of your God, Adonai. You shall not do any work, you, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them, and then rested on the seventh day. Therefore Adonai blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Okay, indeed. So we get two more here. Don't swear falsely. Got to watch that language. Got to watch how we use God's name. God's name has power. God's name has impact and force behind it. So we can't just shout it out willy-nilly. There's a lot of debate, obviously, on what it means to take God's name in vain, swear falsely by the name of God. But again, it underscores this idea of be careful with holy things. Be careful with God's name, or else once again, zap. Sabbath day we got, an understanding of the Sabbath day. We have remember here, Zachor and Deuteronomy, when the Ten Commandments are repeated, we get Shamor, to observe the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. And so again, maybe someone misheard from one to the other. But the idea is that God says both at the same time, so you can hear what you want to hear. Either way, guard, keep, observe, remember, it's all good. 6 days we labor, but the seventh day is the Sabbath, it's Shabbat. No work for anybody. So why do we rest on Shabbat? God told us to, and we're imitating God, right? Because God rests and we rest, right? It's an imitation of the divine. Imitatio Dei, as our friend Francis of Assisi would tell us. But different religion and a little later on in the world. A lot later on. But very important theological concept for all religious traditions is the idea of the imitation of God. We can't be God, but we can act like God. And this is one way in which we can act like God. In a way, we can, imitate the sincerest form of flattery. There were some rabbis who made a calf, according to the tradition, out of, nothing. It didn't work so well, but they said you shouldn't do that. That kind of imitation of God, only God is able to create. We should be able to create ex nihilo out of nothing. But they decided to try to make a calf, and they did, and they ate it. So, it worked out well for them. They had a steak. They said, maybe don't do that anymore. Okay. Sharon, give me a little more. Honor your father.
Honor your father and your mother, that you may long endure on the land that your God, Adonai, is assigning to you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife or male or female slave or ox or ass or anything that is your neighbor's.
Indeed, you should not.
No
coveting. No coveting. So, first one, honor your father and mother, is the only commandment that has a little bit of a difference than all the other commandments. We get a reason why we should honor your father and mother. The rest of them are just sort of commandments. Do this, don't do this, right? But this is the one where we get a reason. Honor your father and mother that you may long endure on the land that your God is assigning you. So we get a little bit more of a reward from doing this commandment. Why is that the case?
They don't kick you out of the house when you graduate from college.
Exactly.
You can long endure.
You can long endure. The idea being that, at least according to some different sources, that honoring your father and mother is not always easy. So you need extra incentive to honor your father and mother, because sometimes it's not the easiest thing in the world.
To endure.
Yeah, so we can endure on the land. That God didn't kick us out and have us wander. Of course, we wind up wandering anyway, but that's a little bit, that's a spoiler for later. But indeed, we're supposed to do this because it's not easy. And it says, honor your father and your mother, because according to, again, a similar tradition, that supposedly it's easier for children to honor their mother and less easy to honor their father, because everyone loves mom. Mother's Day, everyone loves mom. It's a lot easier. Dad, sometimes a little harder to deal with. I don't know how true that is in terms of how that holds, but that was one of the reasons why they say that this is the order, because later on you get revere/fear your mother and your father for that same reason. That mom comes first because it's easier in a way to revere/fear dad, but a little bit harder perhaps to do that with mom. So just something they throw out there as an idea. The rest of
I thought it was something to do with you always know who your mother is, but you're never quite sure at the time who your father was.
Yeah, that's going to come into matrilineal versus patrilineal descent.
Yeah.
That a baby who's born from a Jewish mother, you know who the mom is, but the dad could be any old whatever. We don't know who the dad always is. Not the most liberal of outlooks. But that being said, that's where we get the idea that Judaism is passed through the mother. The Reform movement, of course, changed that and said that we can have you know, if the dad is Jewish, the kid is Jewish. And frankly, you know, it's okay. We'll figure it out. Unless you're really planning on like moving to Israel and like dealing with the chief rabbis there, it doesn't really matter that much.
There is another sect.
Sister, brother.
There is another sect, and I can't think of their name, where Judaism, where your Judaism comes from your father, and I can't think of the name of the group.
No, well, you know, I'm pretty sure the Reconstructionists probably.
No, no, they're not.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can find it.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
did you just, I want to make sure I got that clear. The reason that the child is considered Jewish if the mother is Jewish is because you know who the mother is, but not always can prove who the father is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, that was like certainly in the Middle Ages and other times, you know, like you don't know, you know, there's no DNA testing back then, right? And so
Yeah.
you sort of know.
Oh,
Yeah.
Rabbi, that was the Karaites who believed that
Oh,
you
the
get
Karaites, yeah.
Yeah.
They're not around anymore. There, you know, yeah.
What are the reconstructions?
What?
What are the reconstructions?
After the Civil War,
Yeah.
different group.
No, I misspoke. I forgot more Dr. Kaplan's group already. That's where my brain is today. So what's the other group?
The only ones I was born, the Reconstructionists I've heard of, but I don't,
Did I get that right then? Because my brain isn't there.
that's another movement. I don't know what they believe, Frank, but
Yeah.
they're another movement of
So
Judaism.
did I get it right?
I
My
think they're a
brain.
pretty small group.
Because the synagogue that I grew up in is now reconstructed.
See, I don't remember what the.
What?
Yeah, well, we got married.
Reconstructionist?
Yeah, that's what I
I
heard.
thought you were Jewish.
Jewish Reconstruction.
Yeah, I had it right. Boy, my brain just, you know, yeah, Reconstructionist Judaism. Yeah. So there are three major denominations, with Reconstructionists being considered a fourth denomination at this point. What their theology is, don't ask me at this point, because it's changed so much over the past 50 years. Reconstructionist Judaism was founded upon the idea that God works through history, but there is no personal deity. The idea that God, you know, is sort of revealed through, but there is no concept of, you know, you can't pray to God because there is no personal God. God is a construct that sort of works through history. And, you know, nature and this and that, but there is no active, but that has all been out the window for the past 50 years, the Reconstructionist movement. You know, they are almost a blending of reform and conservative Judaism in a way, but like, so in some ways they're more liberal than the Reform Jews, and a couple of things that are like they're traditional, like conservative Jews. It's a mishmash movement, and so I think it's depending on where you are, what synagogue you're in. You know, the Mordecai Kaplan vision of Reconstructionist Judaism, you know, is different, I think, than what happens today. But they have their own seminary, you know, Philadelphia. If anyone remembers our youth advisor, Bridget, that's where she's going to rabbinical school, is in that movement, seminary. So that's neither here nor there, but, you know, but it is, yeah, they're there. Yeah, patrilineal descent is tricky, you know, because it's like one of those things that sounds right, at least to me, you know, that like, you know, we should have the ability to say, well, if your dad's Jewish, then, you know, you're Jewish. But it's also a schism with the conservative and Orthodox movements, and then it causes an issue of who's a Jew, right? Because it's not uniform. Once we've taken a different direction and say, okay, well, you know, if your dad's Jewish, the kid's Jewish, and then they want to marry an Orthodox Jew, and they're like, well, here's my, you know, Catholic mom, you know, it becomes a thing. And so I think there's different ideas on, like, do we affirm patrilineal descent and just leave it as is? Or if the dad's Jewish and the mom's not Jewish, do you mikvah the kid just in case, you know, of later, you know, 20 years later, kind of like what's going to happen. But then, like, why have it at all then? Like, why affirm patrilineal descent if you can mikvah the kid anyway and say you need to have a conversion because your mom's not Jewish and dunk the baby? So I don't know. It's a sticky wicket. I had one recently about surrogacy. About if the mom is Jewish and the dad is Jewish, and it's both their genetic material into a non-Jewish surrogate.
Good question.
Is the baby Jewish when the baby is born? Because the baby is being born through a non-Jewish person. The answer is
Yes. Yes.
That's an
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
question.
Yeah. Yes, but it's a good time. Like, we live in a very different age. They weren't worrying about this 1,000 years ago. Probably.
What was the answer? I didn't hear it.
The answer is that the baby is considered Jewish because the person who is birthing the baby is not the mother. The person who is birthing the baby is a vessel, so to speak, in this case.
The
But
incubator.
it's not an incubator, but it's not the mother of the child. By definition, it's a surrogate, and so because the genetic material, is from the mom and the and the dad, who will be, the baby is Jewish. So there's a minority opinion that you make for the baby anyway. Again, just the cause, just to be safe. But the birth waters the baby is born is the mikvah. Isn't that lovely? We can head to Rabbi's biology course after this. I can draw pictures. Okay.
Rabbi, what happens when there are two fathers?
Two fathers, same thing. That if the baby is born from a surrogate, and really this is the issue with babies as is, there's the growing trend, unless you're really in the ultra orthodox movement, is that a baby has no choice of what they are. It's the way they're brought up. It's the way that they're raised, and so you don't need to really convert a baby. It's like adoption. It's obviously a similar idea. But if you adopt a baby, the baby has no religion. When you adopt a child, you're bringing them up in the faith tradition, right? And so it's less common to see, babies mikvahd, but if the child is of a certain age, if they're adopted, then it's a different story. And once again, it goes back to, covering all your bases. If you're sort of worried about your child's Jewish status, because they're going to be, who knows, when they're in college, when they're older, and if they're dating, and if they're dating someone who's Orthodox or whatever it might be, like, do you really want there to be a question of Jewish heritage or lineage? That's why the mikvah is usually the best route, if you're concerned about that. Or, as I mentioned, if you're like, if in 30 years they want to make aliyah or something to Israel, there might be some questions depending on what the circumstances.
Rabbi, this is a crazy question, but who do you turn to for these answers? Who makes the final decision for all these problems? Oh, you're
I'm making the calls. So there are a couple different things. So we have in every movement has what's called a responsa committee, right? So back in the day, thousands of years ago, like, people would write letters to the rabbinic, assemblies in Babylonia, and they would get their answers. These were called teshuvot. They'd be called answers or responsa material. And so we actually have a lineage, obviously, a Jewish legal sort of narrative that takes place over, 2,000 years, that continues today. And so people ask questions of the reform, and we have a committee, that gets together, they'll get questions, and then they'll write the answers to said questions, as law develops. And so then, but remember, we don't have a pope, right? Like we don't have that kind of figure. So eventually, it does come down to community rabbis, in a way, and that you would hopefully lean on the guidance, of, your synagogue rabbi or rabbis in the community you also trust, and you get a consensus,
Well, the Hasidim do that, right? They
Yeah.
go to their Rebbe.
there's there are just the rabbinical courts, and so, like, if you came to me, if one person came to me and they came to me with that question of the surrogate, I would say, well, this is what I can teach you about this. And then, I would give them the options. Then, and I sort of explain as I'm explaining now, like what could or should be done, and then leave it to them to make their own sort of choice on that particular issue. Other times I would say, this is it, do this, as much as I can. In terms of keeping with Jewish tradition, it's like if someone asks about circumcision, right? It's like you leave it up to the parents eventually, but I can't tell them that it's not a problem if they're not going to circumcise their kid. Like, it's going to be a problem. Forget, mikvah and Jewish identity. There's a very visible issue if they start dating a Jewish girl, and things progress to that point, and they go, well, that's not right, and that's a problem. And then it's a problem when they're 19 to get circumcised, or, whatever it is, because, not so much fun. And it's also an elective procedure, which means it's not covered by insurance, unless you find a really nice Jewish urologist who can hook you up, and which happens enough times, where the urologist can make up a reason to have the circumcision covered by insurance. You just got to go to, Dr. Schwartz and not Dr. O'Connor. You go to the right, the right urologist, and you figure it out. A little inside baseball there, but I'm saying it's like you have to give the answer that makes sense according to Jewish law and teachings, and say, look, we're part of a movement, we're part of a people, and there are certain things that we do, and if you don't do them, that's a choice, but then there's going to be consequences to those choices later.
Rabbi, I know about 25, 30 years ago, after the Soviet Union, as it was falling, and as they started letting people out of the country, in the Jews into Russia, that there were about 1 million, and increased the population of Israel by like 20%. But part of the problem was trying to determine how many of these people were actually Jewish, because a generation or two, they were pretty much not allowed to practice Judaism. And so it became very unclear who was actually Jewish and who made the decision. Was it the chief rabbi of Israel and his people who worked with him? And it was a big deal back then. And I think, they had to make these kind of rules or determine these kind of things.
Yeah, and you had it with them. We had it even more with the Ethiopian community when they came in, about their status. Boy, that was a hot mess. Trying to figure that out. That was not done very well. Though again, it's hard to throw stones, back then. But that being said, it wasn't easy. And there was a lot of hoops to jump through for people to prove their Jewish connectivity.
Wasn't there a certain amount of
even now, I'll get letters.
And it's still kind of controversial over there with Ethiopians.
I mean, only to the extent that some people don't like black people. So it's like no, but I'm saying that's the reason. No, it's more that
some racism.
Yeah, there's a skosh racism there.
It's a global phenomenon.
Yeah. And so like that's sort of where it comes. I'm not telling you the other thing is completely gone either, but I'm saying that that's right now it's usually much better than it was. So like the Jewish identity question, there's always folks who want to find ways to have challenges to other people's Jewish identity or experience, and so there's a lot of uncomfortable conversations, and I think perhaps we beat ourselves up a little bit too much, or beat each other up, frankly, a little bit too much is a better way of saying it. Sort of questioning Jewish identity. If I went to Israel, I'm not considered obviously in the same way as a rabbi there that I am in other places, because in Israel it's like the Orthodox movement, they have a monopoly on Jewish teaching, Jewish law, Jewish ritual, Jewish identity, and so it's tricky to say the least. You go to other places, it's fine. You go to Israel, which is the land of the Jewish, the Jewish homeland. That's where it's hard to be Jewish.
That subject will change based on political maneuvering among the parties, Stephen.
Yeah, a lot of political maneuvering, we're saying, and so there is hope for the future, and things have again been progressing positively, mostly. But it's as I always say, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 7/8 steps back. But you still get that little bit of ground. You get a little bit of ground each time. So you're not going backwards, but you're not making the same kind of progress there. It's just sort of like wading through, but everyone wades through. That's hard to get through. Just trying to slosh your way forward. Okay. That was fun. Okay. That was fun. So yeah, and now we get the thou shalt nots. I was to point out that it says you shall not murder. Which is very different than you shall not kill. Killing is fine. Depending on the context, you can kill who you want to kill. You can't murder somebody. That's different because you kill someone at war, right? You have if you're fighting somebody, you can kill them and it's perfectly fine. But you cannot murder somebody. You can't take someone's life, in a violent way that is not your and it's not an opposing soldier, for example, or that you're killing somebody not in self-defense. So it's very specific that like murder is one category, and there are other categories of taking someone's life that are different. You shall not. Yes, go ahead.
As we read that, I was thinking, gee, Putin's murdering and stealing. I mean, they call it a war, but it's not a war. He went right in there and invaded and killed and murdered and just it was because he wants it.
Yeah, he's violating a lot of commandments. I'm not really sure he minds. But
no,
yeah,
I'm still doing it. And I was thinking if there is a God, then hopefully
a little divine intervention would be nice right now, to be sure. That would be nice at this point. Adultery, we have a sense of adultery, stealing, lying, all this other sort of stuff. So it's a little bit trickier because, like, the question about coveting, for example, is like, how do you know if someone is coveting you, or like coveting something that you own?
He's coveting Ukraine. He's coveting Ukraine. He wants their land. What does he want it for?
Yeah, Putin's coveting everything. Yeah, I guess that he wants right now. But all of it's coveting as much as his control. He wants to, control everything and control, the people there. Liberate those Russians in Ukraine. It's a mess. And obviously possessions. That's there. That's what he's doing. Okay, so that's the 10, so to speak. We have the 10 here, but of course, there's more to come. So that's like sort of the big moment of the commandments. And Barbara,
Rabbi, can we go back to adultery for a minute?
Oh, of course. Don't tell my wife.
Do you have to be, if you have somebody who's married and somebody who's not married, are both of those people committing adultery if they have sexual intercourse, or is just the person who's married?
They're both dead.
Okay.
Yeah, they're both dead meat later. There are some exceptions, to the rules, as we're going to find out in a few Torah portions ahead of us. But yeah, for the most part, everyone's getting stoned. So,
like if you,
and not in the Colorado way.
Everybody,
husband in the front lines of battle, you avoid adultery, but maybe not cover.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like there are ways around sometimes the rules. And as you will, I'm sure, not be shocked, some of these are related to gender, and and so that's definitely part of it as well. If you were a woman, you were certainly more likely to be in big trouble. If you were a man, again, depending on circumstance, you could find a little bit of some leeway, there. And even, today amongst the Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox Jews, I'll put it this way, there is a thriving prostitution business in Israel, and all the people who are going to these sex workers are not exactly all secular. I'll put it that way. And so they find their ways to justify and to explain why it's okay. And so again, it's the joys of being able to bend and twist and justify. As we know, you can sort of make text say what you want it to say, and find ways of figuring it out. But these ultra orthodox guys aren't going to Beersheba for the scenery. But there ain't much of it in Beersheba. But there are some other things in Beersheba. I pick on Beersheba, but it's only because it's terrible.
You could still describe it as the scenery.
Yes, and of course our FSU folks, are contributing to both ends of that industry. Both in the let's move on. See, Barbie, get me in trouble.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're getting me in trouble talking about sex workers at Bible study. Pete, you got to edit this out too. Gonna be on YouTube forever. My goodness. Yes, intellectual exercise indeed. Okay, Barbie, I pick all the people witnessed.
All the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the blare of the horn, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they fell back and stood at a distance. You speak to us, they said to Moses, and we will obey. But let not God speak to us, lest we die. Moses answered the people, be not afraid, for God has come only in order to test you, and in order that the fear of God may be ever with you, so that you do not go astray. So the people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick cloud where God was.
Okay, so the people are overwhelmed by the experience, right? The idea of God speaking to them. That's what the tradition has, it that God basically speaks the first commandment, and that's it. Then Moses sort of relays the other 9. The close reading here has God speaking all 10, but there's different traditions about how much of God's voice did the people hear, or else their heads would explode. And so Moses is going to be the mouthpiece. God's not going to talk to the people of Israel directly. God's going to speak through Moses once in a while, in a blue moon through Aaron, but usually through Moses. I think Aaron gets once, God speaks to Aaron. It's usually God speaks to Moses and Aaron. But I think there's one time where God speaks to Aaron directly. Makes him feel special. It was his birthday.
I have a
What do you
question.
want? Yeah, go ahead.
That sentence where it talked about the fear of God.
Yeah.
So you don't go astray.
Yeah.
Is that related to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur? I remember a long time ago when we lived on Long Island, we had a Rabbi Saperstein, who is the father of Rabbi Saperstein and the what? Yeah, the father of David. And he was our rabbi then, and I asked him about that kind of question. And he talked about that that's how you keep people straight. That's how you keep people from, that's how you build conscience. Is that what this is all about?
Yeah. So there is always debate about the idea of yirat Adonai, the idea of fear of God versus reverence of God. How do we parse that phrase? And I would say that from a biblical context, that I would tend to lean more towards fear, because back then I would agree with what the elder Saperstein, was saying. The idea that in the Bible, in the biblical context, it was about fear. Do this, or else you get zapped, right? That's pretty clear in the Torah, that there's a lot of, if you do this, good stuff will happen. If you do bad stuff's going to happen, and God's going to come down and smack you around. And so that's not reverence, that's fear, right? Yeah. And so I think the idea would be that as we evolve, that, and as human beings develop from childhood to adulthood, that we don't do things necessarily because we're afraid of the consequences. We do it because we know it's the right thing to do, or we don't do it because we know it's the wrong thing to do. And we have, again, more of the idea of reverence, right? Of God, versus, God's going to get me if I don't do the right thing. Now we have this, as you mentioned, obviously in our high holiday liturgy as well, that high holidays are more when we have a little bit of the, the shock and awe and a little bit more fear, in the liturgy, because frankly, the liturgy is a little scary. Who shall live and who shall die? The gates are closing, run, God's gonna judge you. God's gonna, all your deeds are in a book. God's checking the list and checking it twice. And so it's like the most, I think it has a little bit more fear into the holidays, for better or for worse, I'll add, in the high holidays than you have in other places in Jewish tradition, which is why it's a little bit more jarring in the high holiday liturgy, because we don't always talk about God like that, as the judge, as the king, as the ruler, as the one who's going to, reward you if you're good or punish you if you're bad. Avinu Malkeinu, or our Father, or our what do we say? Our parent, our sovereign. Our Father, our King, but our parent, our sovereign. That it's a different kind of feeling where there's a little bit more fear of punishment that comes in the high holidays. Not as much as it used to, but I'm just saying that thread certainly is there. And we don't have that as much in other points of our calendar. But yeah, the idea that the people were motivated perhaps less out of a sense of awe and wonder and gratitude and appreciation, more than, God's gonna zap you if you screw up.
I think they've kind of proven they're not real motivated by it's the latter.
Well, it's human nature as well, right? There's a lot there where where fear is can be seen as a motivator, And so I think back then that's what we were looking at more, is the fear, trepidation, awe.
Right.
One day we'll read Rudolf Otto together, a great German theologian, and talked about the experience of the holy, and what do you do when you experience, what's the feeling that is evoked, and so it's very interesting reading in and of itself. Another day for Rudolf Otto.
Sounds good.
But I think about that.
Does sound good.
The idea of the holy. Good book if you can get it on Amazon. The idea of the holy. So
But people
not necessarily a fun read, but but a good read.
But people won't be good without this fear. That was like the message that I got at the time, that we need this to keep us in line. This external
thing like that. Like that's the argument. And again, I'm not sure whether or not we need it necessarily, as we develop and as we get older. Remember the children of Israel, right? Like they're not literally children, but in their theological understanding, they were like children, right? And so you need a deity in a way that would say, don't do this. Why? Because I said so. Like that's, you don't reason with children in the same way as you do with adults. Their brains aren't developed to the point of reason. If I tell Benji not to do something and he goes, why not? I could give him a 5-minute treatise on why touching the stove is bad, but like better just don't touch the stove. And he's not gonna get it all the way through, or whatever the example might be. Eventually it's just no, and it's not what we're doing. Today.
Touch it, find out.
Yeah. Stop throwing whatever it is at your brother. Stop smacking them with the wand. That we have, the Harry Potter wand. Abracadabra, bam. It's a little bit less abracadabra than. Oh yeah, exactly. It's the magic trick of injury. I can make you have one eye.
Any
Yeah.
relationship to this, and why some people might want autocracy or a dictatorship, why they might even want one? What?
It's simpler. People like black and white. People like black and white. They don't like living in the gray, but most of us live in the gray. But it's uncomfortable to live in the gray. So we tend to try to find black and white answers to anything because that's not challenging. That's something that's simple. We can understand yes versus no. Maybe is different. There's a lot of maybes and perhaps in life, and that's very uncomfortable. And so we as humans tend more towards we like the yes, we like the no. This is good. This is bad. Not
You know what, Rabbi?
maybe it's good. Maybe it's bad.
It reminds me of what my pediatrician told us years ago. There's negotiables and non-negotiables. So God just has certain things that are absolutely non-negotiable. You need to follow what he says, period.
Or do you?
Or do you, right?
No, but I'm saying, but that's exactly the issue. 100%, right? It's a question of how are we delineating, those yeses and those nos,
Right.
And what's up for debate and what's not up for debate, and that's also negotiable. So and that's why we get so many fun debates and fun things going on because everyone's yeses and nos are not the same.
Right.
And there are very few, precious few, moral imperatives and ones that are always, yeses, or always nos. I'm anti-torture, right? Like I don't believe that torture is a good thing. But if someone's going to get tortured and through that torture, there's 1,000 lives that are saved, what do you do there? I'm not advocating for torture. I'm just saying that, that what is a simple decision for one. Pete, again, edit. But like, for some people, that's a different answer depending on who you ask, right? That you can say that this is unequivocally wrong, right? Like this is always wrong and no questions asked until someone says maybe not. And then we're off to the races, on it. And again, there's precious few things that somebody can't say, maybe not. And to us, it would be abhorrent, for them to say maybe not, whatever it is, because it's so far beyond the realm of our understanding of why someone would act in a certain way, because it's repugnant to our values. And then they go, I had a teacher who always said, when you talk about values, you can say, that's nice. And that's all you can say. That's nice, because is it good? Is it bad? Maybe, not much to say. Again, I wouldn't go with that. I'm just saying that, that was his view, is that people can justify anything, that they do. We could say that's bad, and they look at us and say, it's nice. That's your opinion, that it's bad, but I disagree. And other people say the same thing. So it just leads us down wonderful pathways of moral equivalency and a world of no laws and anarchy.
Yeah. And look what that's done to our country. I'm wrong and you're right, or you're wrong and I'm right, whatever.
Maybe we are. Maybe they are, or maybe not.
I know, but people are certainly hating each other just because of that.
Yeah, lots at stake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you believe with any kind of sincerity or authenticity in your opinion, you can't just go, maybe you're right too. That's not how it works. If you have a strongly held belief and you believe you're right, another belief can't be, that's fine also. You do you. No, that's not how it works with strongly held convictions or beliefs. And so, again, it's a dangerous path to be sure. But I'm just saying that I can't hold it against somebody to have a really strongly held opinion that's different than my own, for example, because I believe what I believe, for my reasons, and they believe what they believe for their reasons. I'm not sure I could judge them for being right or wrong, or they can judge me for being right or wrong if it gets us anywhere. But we do.
But one thing that's interesting about it is that there is a lot less neutral.
But I'm saying, how can they be neutral on important, divisive issues that are believed to be life and death, or or whatever it is? Like, how do you be neutral? sort of on it. You have to take it, I'm saying on the big stuff, right? Like there has to be an opinion, if it's something that you're passionate about.
Well, maybe there wasn't passion in the 50s, for example. Maybe there wasn't passion.
Oh, there was a lot of passion about the segregation. And,
Yes, that's true. I'm sorry, I didn't grow up in the South.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like depending on where you were, like whatever the issue of the day is, there's a lot of anger for the ways things are, are going to be, but it makes it hard when we believe, when one side believes they're so right, the side believes just as passionately that that's wrong. And I think I'm right. They think they're right. We'll find out. Just like, the ones who believe all Jews are going to hell, we'll find out.
We may not even find out.
Oh, no, might not even find out, It reminds me of the, oh God, what's his name? I can't remember the actor's name. There was an actor, he did Mr. Bean. I don't remember the name.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Rowan Atkins.
Like he has a bit, where he's the devil and he's like going through all this like stuff, and then like he pretends to take questions and someone like asks him, hey, what's going on? I was at this, I was that, and he goes, I'm sorry, the Jews were right. And he sort of like that's at the end of the bit, like, why am I here? I was a devout Protestant and this and that, but obviously the bit falls apart because Jews don't believe in Satan or the devil like that. But that's sort of the idea behind it. We don't know until the end. And so that's it's definitely we live in a world of diverse opinions, and people are entitled, to hold their beliefs, their faith traditions. The question is, again, when it comes to my nose, right? Like that's what we always sort of learn. Like your faith stops at my nose. If you don't believe in this, you don't believe in that, that's great, but you can't force me to not believe in this or that, or believe in this or that, because I have my own right to make up my own mind. And we can't have laws that are, based on one person's or one group's religious experience or understanding. It doesn't work so well. One would think. We'll find out, I guess, on certain issues. But separation of church and state would be nice. I'm not sure how reasonable it always is, but it's right. Or how enforceable it is. Maybe it's a better way of putting it. Goodness gracious, this got deep, this Torah study. Now we're on track. We're just talking about, some of this material here, which is good. It provokes discussion. To end on a lighter note here. So hold on, we did this already? No, hold on. Let's skip far ahead. Thick cloud. Yes, let's do these two paragraphs so we can end on a humorous note at any rate. Leah, you want to pick up? Adonai said to Moses?
Adonai said to Moses, thus shall you say to the Israelites, you yourselves saw that I spoke to you from the very heavens. With me, therefore, you shall not make any gods of silver, nor shall you make for yourselves any gods of gold. Make for me an altar of earth and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your sacrifices of well-being, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you.
Okay, so very nice. We get another prohibition against idolatry, right? I mean, it's like we're just after the 10 Commandments. So we have to have another prohibition against idolatry. This is how you worship, not this way, right? So do this, not that. Because, if you do that, that's a problem. And one of the best commandments coming up right now, that's how we'll end. Leah, pick up here.
And if you make for me an altar of stones, do not build it of hewn stones, for by welding your tool upon them, you have profaned them. Do not ascend my altar by steps, that your nakedness may not be exposed upon it.
If you're wearing a tunic and you're going upstairs, the tunic is sort of split a little bit and there's a chance that you're going to flash the deity. But you might not be wearing undergarments. There might not be linen breeches at the time, and things might be, going left, going right. You can't have that. So when you are ascending to the thing, you have to have a ramp, not steps, because if you have steps, again, you might wield your tool, so to speak, in a way that is inappropriate, for the deity. And so you have to make sure, keep everything covered. Very important.
So is that where it comes from, that you shouldn't wear, the idea of not wearing sleeveless?
No, that's gonna come later because we hate women.
Okay.
So that's gonna come later. Pretty sure.
That's the nuns.
Hate and fear, to correct it, of women, that we want to make sure that, and ourselves, to be fair, also, because we are worried about our own lustful urges, that if we see a little bit of elbow, we're gonna go nuts. And so
I've seen that happen multiple times.
Elbows are very erogenous. Elbows and ankles. Hey, look, I can't knock anyone else's. I don't want to knock anyone else's kink, whatever it might be. But I'm just saying, you have to cover it up. I remember I had an Orthodox woman who was a professor of mine. She was liberal enough, to work in a Reform seminary, but she still had, issues of sniut, of modesty. And so one day she literally asked the class if we would be okay if she took off. She was wearing like 6 sweaters, so if she could take off her sweater, and we wouldn't all judge her for being less than modest. And so we said, sure, it's fine. And she took off her sweater. Then one of the guys catcalled her. It was not a good moment for the Reform movement. But it was a silly way.
I was going to say, this guy start hooting, son of a gun.
Yeah, teasing her a little bit. Yeah, but she
differ from a ramp.
Because a ramp, you have a less likely experience to expose yourself.
Wear underwear instead.
Whatever it is. We don't have to work too hard on the dynamics of, but just, so that was the concern. Or just, flat ground is fine too. But we like to ascend things, right? We like to go up.
The way I took it was that you shouldn't be building up.
No, we like to ascend. Of course we ascend. We have a bima, you got to go up. Aliyah, you go up. And so, but we try to make sure that we're all right here. So that's a good way to end today, is to remember just to walk modestly with your God and before your God, and just sort of be careful.
Yeah,
this was fun.
Yeah, that one was.
Yes.
This was, Bible study, a little R-rated today. Well, the woman can't be walking up the ramp anyway. You're not going up the ramp.
So she has nothing to wield.
So you're covering
women are in the back. They got
So it's the eternal, you have nothing to wear, right?
Yeah, but it's definitely, look, the biblical laws lead us to interesting, places and interesting ideas, and some people enjoy the biblical law being enacted today, and I think some folks would like that to happen today. With just a quick scheduling change, I'm not going to be here next week. I'm going to be in DC. I am going to a rally in front of the Supreme Court next week, and so that's where I'm going to be. So there will not be Bible study because I'm going to be praying with my feet, as we say, and sort of doing a little bit of righteous protest. So that's where I'll be next.
Is your whole family going?
Just me. I'm going to leave Monday night. The rally is Tuesday morning, and I'll be back hopefully by Tuesday evening if all goes.
Yeah, well, be safe.
According to
Yeah, exactly. Be safe.
Yeah, I will be safe, and it'll be, I think, a really powerful experience. And so,
is it a lot of rabbis going together?
There's the different, from all parts of the country, people are flying in. This is being sponsored by every major Jewish organization that is not Chabad. But basically everyone else is sponsoring this. Reform, conservative, Orthodox, different major Jewish organizations. So it should be a good crowd.
That's
Should be a
great.
good crowd. So that's where I'll be. So I'm gonna send out an email reminder. That's where I'll be.
Thank
Okay.
you for representing us.